Welcome into episode number 6 of the Sharps Report podcast. My name is Matt Perrault. You guys probably know me from the Daily Juice podcast. This podcast is a long-form conversation with bookmakers, professional sports gamblers, and market makers that we want to identify and have long-form talks with. And this guy, well, I started talking to him back in 2001. That's 20 years of conversations about sports betting in the media. He is Sterling of Paramount Sports, going back to our Huntsville, Alabama days, joining us here on the Sharps Report. Lee, how are you, my friend?
That's pretty good because I'm only 25. So started, I guess, when I was about 4 or 5 years old. So, yeah, it's been a long ride. I've stayed in the same place in Miami. You've moved all over and finally settled in a rocket ship of a city. Vegas is it right now.
Yeah, Vegas is a lot of fun. I want to start the conversation just to give people a background as to how you got into this, how long you've been doing this. Yeah. I've heard this a bunch of times, but for audiences, for listeners who don't know your background, how did you become, one of the guys who you hear all over the place handicapping games?
Okay, so I played quarterback at Southwest Texas State, now Texas State, in 1981, 82. I was someone who actually bet games with my dad when I was in high school and junior high. He was a dentist and a coach. In fact, when I was 11 years old, I don't think you know this story. So we got on a plane one time. I'll never forget. It's 11, 12 years old. And we go to San Diego. He says, you're going to hear someone that changed football. We went to a conference where Sid Gilman spoke. And Sid Gilman, who was the coach of the San Diego Chargers, was one in 3 and 4 receivers with 1 running back, and went through his principles on offensive football. And then I'll never forget that after the conference, my dad started talking to him, and the conference ended like 6:00. He says to Sid, how'd you like to have dinner with me? So the 3 of us having dinner, I'm 12 years old, until about 10:30, 11 o'clock when we closed down a restaurant in San Diego. And so that's what always got me interested in the philosophy of offense. And in a nutshell, his offense was, listen, I'm not going to get the greatest players, but if I can get players in one-on-one situations, then I'm probably going to get some pretty big games instead of trying to bang it out. And, the old offenses in the AFL, were pro set offenses. And, if you didn't have talent, like the Raiders or the Chiefs or the Jets, you weren't going to win. So he found a different way around it and was very successful. So I go to college. After a couple of years, realized I'm not playing in the NFL, transferred to the University of Texas. And as I'm there, I'm picking games for all my friends and talking to some players who I used to play with. I think like 8 guys played in the NFL from that, most notably one of my good friends, Ricky Sanders, for the Redskins. And so I used to pick up the phone and call them and find out what's going on and, not doing anything illegal. We're just friends. And that got me interested in handicapping. And then never forget this, I'm managing leasing shopping centers. I'm still a real estate broker and still do some stuff there. And I go to a wedding, I think it's about 28 years ago. And 2 guys at the table from my fraternity became sports talk show hosts in St. Louis and Houston. And they're like, why don't you come on and talk about the games? You used to always win for us. So I come on, start the season in, I think, like 1993. And sure enough, after the segment, they're calling me like, listen, you got to have a number. I'm like, well, I don't have a number. Like, well, get one. I got an 800 number, did it part-time that year. And by the end of the year, I decided I was going to give it a go. I sent out 12 cassette tapes, put them in the mail to different sports talk show hosts, and 10 of those 12 took it. So I had 12 shows, quit the real estate business, and here I am.
How have you seen the world being so focused where the offshores were the only way to get an out? Yeah. Now with legalization across the country, through your eyes, just what does this world look like?
I mean, it's changed in the last 2-3 years. I mean, I get 4 or 5 calls a week. How do I bet? Who do I bet with? How do I do it? And I tell them, listen, call me when I'm not busy. Football season, I'm working 80, 85 hours a week, and I'll explain it to you. So it's not easy. People think, oh, it's a glamorous job. I go to parties all the time. Like, people are like, first question, who's going to win the Super Bowl? I'm like, I don't know. Just ask me when it gets to the Super Bowl, and I'll probably have a decent chance of winning it. So that's the most common question. I don't love to talk sports when I'm out a whole lot. Want to just relax and decompress. But I work hard. I mean, I've watched 88 spring games already. And if you're looking for me to tell you Alabama, Oklahoma, Ohio State, and either Georgia or Clemson is going to be in the Final Four like Phil Steele does, you're listening to the wrong podcast. I take some shots, and I think I've been successful more times than not. I sold my picks, I think about 10, 11 years ago in Vegas Insider for a year. Didn't like how that turned out. We had some different pricing, thoughts about pricing. But I'm selling my picks at Covers, and probably the largest pick seller. I've been there over a year. It's worked out great. They're receptive to everything, and they got almost 40 handicappers, and I was the number one handicapper last year, combined college and pro football money winner, and made almost 20 grand if they started with 1,000 bankroll betting between 100 and 500. I don't know if anyone can touch that. And came back, started doing hockey again, even won hockey this year. And I think I'm 5 or 6. I think I'm 6 right now in baseball with a bullet. Since we figured out the spin rates, me and one of my associates, there's some disparaging numbers that are incredible. So using that, we got off to a slow start, but we're picking it up. And only sport I didn't win in was college basketball. I had a losing record there, but had a good record in the NBA. So if you're looking for someone who's honest, you can reach, and pretty affordable and can win for you, that might be what you're looking for.
When you go to spring games, what are you looking for? When you watch practice, what are you trying to figure out by watching a spring game?
Okay, I'm really good at figuring out quarterbacks. I can tell you where a quarterback is and will probably be. And most people don't have that knowledge. Just watch a game and they're looking to see what happens in the game. I'm looking at progressions. Like, let me give you an example. Josh Fields, who I loved, and I thought was a great pick by Chicago. And I thought pretty much all the rookie and young quarterbacks look really good this past week. Josh Fields looked great.
Justin, yes.
He was Justin Fields. What am I saying? He was playing against third teamers. Mm-hmm. And his first progression, he couldn't find a guy. Now, some of it was guys weren't open. He made things happen with his legs, and I think eventually he's going to get really good. But there's different degrees to being successful, and I'm just good at being able to look at quarterbacks. If I can go to a spring game, and I go to 10 or 15 a year, now you can watch them. They're on YouTube. I want to see teams. I'll go to games. I don't want to see where a coach is returning, an offensive coordinator, and a quarterback's returning. I want to go where maybe a new coach or a new offensive coordinator and maybe a new quarterback or a quarterback going from his first to second year starting, maybe see some things and get there a day early, watch things, and then just sit back and just take it all in. And I just that's my biggest knack. And also, besides quarterbacks, the most important thing, in my opinion, are not the left tackle in college football, as the center makes the calls. Obviously, in the NFL, it's the left tackle because they're facing the best pass rusher. But in college football, you got to have a center that can make the calls. And defensive tackles. Why not defensive ends? Why not linebackers? There's a million guys that are 6'1", 230. There's not many guys that are 6'3", 300. And if two defensive tackles can neutralize the run game and get some push, well, helps out a lot. Helps the defensive ends, helps the linebackers make tackles, and helps the cornerbacks, gives them, they only have to cover for probably a half second or a second less.
Do you consider yourself an old school handicapper, meaning the eye test means something to you?
A combination of everything. I use a lot of numbers. My background is actually in finance. I got a degree in finance, have a master's also there. So, I do use a lot of numbers. Like, I'm not going to go against, like, for instance, Nick Saban, when he's playing a former coach or playing, let's say, Louisiana Monroe, and he's got a big game the next week. If you're laying like 30, 35 points, you're going to be in the poorhouse pretty quick because he's just looking to put in some things, probably going to play his starters maybe 3 quarters, play the young guys, and he doesn't care about covering. I mean, so you'll look at his record there. It's not very good. So, yeah, if there's a bad number and a bad situation staring me in the face, get off the game. Don't play the game. You don't have to play the game. I mean, there's some pro weeks. I have 1 or 2 games.
Right.
You know, there's well, now it's going to be week 18 now with the bye. But there's been a couple times last week of the year, played 1 game or nothing. I'm like, listen, I don't have anything. Let's wait till the playoffs.
Well, the thing that always attracted me, even back when we first started talking 20 years ago, is that your ability to identify angles on the non-Power 5 schools. Yeah. You can go and identify a line that's on the board, because that's one thing we talk about a lot on the Daily Juice, is that, look, at one of our biggest weapons as gamblers is that we don't have to bet everything, but the books have to throw up numbers on everything. Right. And the little to lesser known games, you can find pretty big angles. How do you divvy up your time from going inside the Power 5 or outside the Power 5 when it comes to what you're looking for?
Well, so most people are doing every sport, and I've got people helping me in baseball and hockey and UFC. So during the summer, I'm ready to go. I've pretty got every angle covered going into the year. So there's going to be some angles that come up, whether it's a coach. Let's say, like, I can tell you week 1, every coach that's facing a team that he caught, he was at last year. He might have been the offensive coordinator that's last year. If a coach is an offensive coordinator for a school and he's going up against his old school, huge advantage. And you won't hear it talked about sometimes until the day before or when the game starts. And so, average person couldn't tell you Louisiana Monroe's nickname, let alone who their coach, who their coordinators are. And also, if I can spot a lot of times backup quarterbacks. So sometimes there's a backup quarterback that's really good. Sometimes one that's a guy that's terrible. And like teams like Texas, they won't move the line much, 1 or 2 points when they go to a backup. But sometimes the difference is 7 or 8 points. So that's where I've been able to make my hay.
It's interesting because I think a lot of people who are in the handicapping world, are always looking for those angles and looking for the right numbers. When do you get involved with college games? I mean, are you placing your bets on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday? Do you wait right before Saturday? When do you look to get involved mostly?
Okay. So if I get a good line on injuries, sometimes on Sunday night or Monday morning. So that's where there's an advantage. Once you get to like Tuesday, from like Tuesday to like Friday night, Saturday morning, sometimes you see almost no line movement at all. There's nothing. So you're betting into a bad number. So like I said, the key is also to be patient. There's a lot of games where I like a team in the NFL, and I would bet it big if it was 3.5, but it's only sitting there at 2 or 2.5 or 3. And sometimes the last 5 minutes before a game kicks off, there's a lot of stuff available. All of a sudden, a lot of people aren't looking at the screen still, but if you're still looking at the screen, you got a lot of outs the last 5 minutes. I found some absolute gifts and some numbers that I've been waiting for all week.
College too, or just pro?
Both. But pro, the number is so much more important. Yeah. I mean, like, look at preseason now. The average person couldn't tell you that there's no overtime anymore. They were talking about it. I knew about this months ago. I mean, right. So when I bet some games, a month or 2 before they put out even, what the matchups were going to be, as soon as they came out with a number, I had an advantage. So teams aren't, they're not even going to play for a tie. They just want the game to end. And a half a point is just worth so much in preseason.
All right, let's go through some of these conferences here, because we're heading towards the college football season. I love picking your brain as to where some of these teams are going to go. So I want to start with kind of at the bottom and work our way to the top here. So I want to start. I am actually curious about where you are with a couple of these teams that are outside the Power 5. So we'll save the Power 5 and count our way up, because we're talking about the smaller conference teams. Mountain West has some interesting teams. Nevada's got a quarterback who's going to go potentially in the top 5. Right. UNLV's got a win total of 1.5, which I already bet the over on, because I think it's ridiculous at 1.5. They have a win in week 1, and then we'll see if they can get one more win somewhere.
Wait, what happens if Tate Martell suits up and plays?
I'm in love. I'm going to be rocking
with him. You haven't watched?
No, I don't love. I don't love. I don't love a kid who's transferred to 3 schools and can't keep himself, from getting kicked out. So
here's what's interesting. I don't know how so many people missed on him. So I never liked the guy from the beginning. I'll never forget this. He shows up at the Miami spring game, and I go to the game, and I'm watching it. Couldn't throw a spiral. And then a day or two afterwards, after spring ball ended, the offensive coordinator at the time, Danilo, said, we're going to have to work on his grip. We're going to have to change his grip. I'm like, this guy's 20 years old, 21 years, and you're going to change his grip on the football? So I never got it. They make some mistakes on kids. So I like Nevada. I think that they're good. If you want a team that might just absolutely shock some people, I think you got to look at someone like maybe Air Force. Air Force. So they return 9 guys on defense. Usually, Letterman-wise, they return like 5 or 6 total. Right. They had like 13 or 14 guys that decided to opt out last year. So big advantage. They're always playing guys when they're younger than everyone else. So, you're looking for a team that they always seem to do extremely well against the spread in conference. So they're a team. I also like Wyoming. They lost their quarterback first play of the year last year. So, that was a tough beat. And they were almost every team returned 17, 18 starters this year because, you're allowed to come back because of COVID. They returned 21 and pretty good on the line play. The problem is if they faced like a power team, like I don't think they face in many power teams at all. But if they were gotten to a bowl, had to face teams with real speed, like a Pac-12 school, let's say they win the Mountain West, and they even had to face someone like UCLA, I think they get taken to the shed. They don't have the speed. But in conference, they can play with them, and I love the coach. Boise State's got some real problems.
Really? Interesting.
Yeah, they've got some injuries. They've got the talent level is way down from a couple of years ago. That's probably why they had their coach leave, and now Andy Avalos got to kind of pick up the pieces.
All right, the AAC is going to be headlined by Cincinnati. Obviously, you got the returning quarterback for the Bearcats, who could be you could be a Heisman Trophy in the conversation. UCF always scores a ton of points. They're always a lot of fun to watch. Navy's a team that I've made a lot of money on over the years, going ahead and betting on their offense and betting on them be able to run the football and put up some big numbers. But anybody in the AAC you like?
So I think the coaching change is going to do UCF some big time. It's going to help them a lot. So I did not like Josh Heupel. I think he's a bum. I think he was just handed some great talent. Yeah. And he just rolled it out there. Didn't do a good job when he was in Oklahoma as offensive coordinator. So I think Gus Malzahn is going to fare really well at this level. I think he's a quality coach. I'm not saying he's a great coach, but at this level, he might be about, if not the best, right up there, top 4 or 5. And I love the quarterback. I love Dylan Gabriel. I think he's excellent, really good. Outside, he doesn't have a great arm, but he plays the spread as well as anyone. As far as reading defense, they get up plays quicker, I think, than any team in the country. And they catch a lot of teams off guard. And then also they lost Randy Shannon, offensive coordinator, worst offensive coordinator I maybe have ever seen. Dumbo. He's an idiot. Let's just be nice guy, but I'll never forget. I used to argue with the Miami fans here about how really good he was with the 2001 Miami defense. All he did was line up in a 4-3. Didn't have to blitz. When you got Sean Taylor, Ed Reed, the list goes on and on of these guys that were, in the Pro Bowl or Pro Bowlers. So he made his name, and now no one picked up the guy. So I think that's going to be a big plus. And maybe another team, I like SMU a lot. So last year they had some injuries. A couple of their key receivers. Their receivers might be top 5 in the country. So everyone knows about Reggie Robertson. He got hurt after 4 games. They got a kid, Danny Gray, 6'1", 180, can run like the wind. I hear he's progressing. Came from a junior college, is really good. They added a kid from Oregon, linebacker, their top tackler. from last year. They return 18 starters from last year, and then you also throw in that kid. You throw in a kicker, one of the best kickers, kid that was at Washington State was excellent, and then tight end from Oklahoma and the quarterback from Oklahoma. Basically got 22 starters. Everyone's returning. Wouldn't shock me if SMU wins the conference. I think Cincinnati's really good, but a little bit different when teams are starting to shoot for you. You know, they're kind of under the radar a little bit the last couple of years.
You got Tanner Mordecai, and look, Sonny Dykes' offense is a ton of fun to watch, and they're great to play for overs. SMU is a fun team to bet overs on because they love to put up the ball and throw a lot. So yeah, that's a team that could be
two good running backs too. Bentley really good, tough to bring down, fast and strong. So a lot of talent is transferred in there, and they've recruited pretty well, and they're developing kids also.
So one independent we'll talk about, obviously it's the big boy, but Notre Dame here, who looks like they may be kind of rebuilding and reloading, if you will. But some people are high on the Irish. How do you feel about Notre Dame going into the year?
I'm not. It's going to be a tough year for them. So after this year, they might want to join the ACC. So I think Brian Kelly's a solid coach. You know, they actually play 12 teams that have a shot of making a bowl. This is one of the toughest schedules this year. So you can't discount pretty much a 3.5-year starter losing Ian Book. A lot of key players. So it's gonna be tough for them. Probably going to be an 8-4, 9-3 team at best.
I love the North Carolina game there because it's a chance for Sam Howell. If he's going to have a Heisman moment, that's the game. He's got to put up 400 yards. He's got to put up something significant on that Irish defense on the road if he's going to be in the Heisman conversation. But I'm eyeballing that game big time for Carolina having a chance to put up a number.
You want North Carolina. Sometimes, you know, if North Carolina is playing great and Notre Dame's down, may not be a time to play it. You want Notre Dame to go into that game. I think it's kind of like week 7, week 8.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
If that's the case, and North Carolina is, you know, back and forth. North Carolina is a great team as a dog. So their coaching staff, they coach great when the pressure is off. Pressure was on them last year against Notre Dame, and Notre Dame smashed them right in the face.
Killed them.
Yep.
Killed them. That was a huge game.
Dominated.
I was bummed because I was all about North Carolina going, okay, this is now their time. And two NFL wide receivers, 2 NFL running backs, and they couldn't do that first drive was awesome. And then that's it.
They never had the ball. Nah. Notre Dame just ran it right down their throat. Yeah. And I mean, their defensive linemen were dominating. So I love Hal, but let's wait. Let's get it in the right situation.
So the Pac-12 is interesting because this is a conference that last year played late. They weren't going to play, and then they did wind up playing. So it was a little bit of a funky type of year. A lot of folks are high on USC. They like what Arizona State's been doing, although there's been some off-the-field issues, obviously, with investigations and whatnot into the Sun Devils. But who do you like out of the Pac-12?
Looking for a sleeper, Utah.
I know people who love Utah to win the Pac-12, and they got pretty good sized bets on Utah to win the Pac-12.
I don't know if they're going to win the Pac-12, but I think they got a good shot to win their side. Charlie Brewer. So I'm pretty tapped into the Baylor program. Mm-hmm. He was unhappy last year on the offense. He was injured. And what happened? He's vindicated. The offensive coordinator fired after 1 year. When you see an offensive coordinator fired after 1 year, some real problems. So if you watch the spring tape of him, 15 for 15, he is crisp. I think he's going to win the job pretty easily. They haven't had a quarterback number of years. They had the kid from Fort Lauderdale, the 3 kids, with Moss at running back. Moss was a good player, but the receiver and the quarterback, they just turn the ball over left and right, and always have really good. Yeah.
They play smash ball football, and the turnovers killed them. I mean, when they were forced to throw, that's when they always got into trouble because you couldn't run on them because they have so many huge defensive linemen. They go and grab 300-pounders like crazy, and then they run the ball down your throat.
They most of them have, outside of BYU, doing missions. So some are 24, 25, 26 years old, and they always play great special teams. So this might be the year that they break through. Everyone likes Washington. A lot of people are all over Washington. So let me say this. There's a reason why you had a kid Patrick O'Brien, transfer there. Patrick O'Brien, pretty good quarterback, Colorado State. why would he leave Colorado State unless he thinks that he can beat out Dylan Morris? Dylan Morris is not impressive. They used to have a bunch of playmakers. Their DBs are pretty good, but there's not any receivers that you fear that can catch a ball, break a tackle, and go 75, 80 yards. Same with the running backs. Look at they get 2 starting running backs for the Dolphins right now. Since then, hadn't been the same. So I'm not as high on them. I think Stanford might play a little bit better. People, they only returned 14 starters. They had a lot of injuries, COVID cases. David Shaw is best when there's not a lot of expectations for him.
That's true. Yep. And the Pac-12 as a whole, I think everybody has kind of looked at them when it comes to the mergers. Is it going to be a Big Ten? Is it going to be someone else they're going to merge with to kind of compete with the SEC? And I think it's because they know that they could go, 11-1 and still get passed over. Like, it's just, they're always forgotten about no matter what happens. And they need Oregon to kind of be their bell cow. And when they're not elite, they got problems.
The biggest plus for the entire conference is they got rid of their commissioner. I mean,
True.
His deal to do the Pac-12 network, they're not on anywhere.
Nope.
So
I mean, you got to be on DirecTV. I mean, it just starts and stops there. If you're not on DirecTV, you're dead in the water with sports fans, and they weren't on DirecTV, and that was it. I never watched Pac-12 games.
He killed the program, and he was. I mean, the expenses they were running through their league office. I mean, be located in Corvallis, be located in Eugene, be located in Sacramento. You really got to be in San Francisco. Yeah. They're an absolute mess. Maybe they figure it out in time, but I'll say this: adding TCU and Oklahoma State's not going to get it done.
No, and that's what I've speculated that I think if they added, Nevada and UNLV, not from competition, but from market standpoints, to go ahead and get people that if you're going to lean into sports gambling to come in and grab a hold of markets like that, and then let Pac-12 kids be marketed here in Vegas, maybe a better, you get more bounce than going and getting an Iowa State or getting a TCU.
People say TCU because of the Dallas market.
No.
I've only met like 2 TCU fans in my entire life.
Yeah. And they're in Fort Worth anyway. So it's like, they're not even in Dallas. So it's like, if you want Dallas, go get SMU. That's a Dallas town. That's a Dallas team if you want to go get somebody in Dallas. Okay. So the ACC, we already touched on North Carolina just here a little bit, but I'm curious how you feel about Virginia Tech and your Miami Hurricanes this year, because Miami's got a date with Alabama in week 1.
Yeah. I think the talent's down at Virginia Tech. I mean, they return, I think, something like 14, 15 starters. So Virginia Tech and Virginia programs, I just don't think are ever going to be that great.
Yeah.
They recruiting, coaching. I'm surprised. Usually I'm pretty right on the money. I thought Justin Fuente was going to be really good. He hasn't turned out to be what I thought he was going to be. So a lot of dissension. You see a lot of guys transferring out here. They can't stop the run. They used to, their defenses were really good. They gave up 4.9 yards per carry last year on the run. You can't do that. So they're still getting sacks, but don't have the offensive players. They're in trouble. Miami's interesting. So I think Miami.
Shocker, you'd be finding in Miami interesting.
I didn't say they're great.
Okay.
So I think they have a 1-game season. If they get blown out by Alabama, there won't be 30,000 fans rest of the games.
Really? Even though everyone knows they're going to get blown out by Alabama. You know what Nick Saban does in week 1. Well, that's what he does.
Here's the thing. If they face Alabama week 6, they get blown out. But watch the tape of the spring game. Bryce Young can be blitzed. If I'm Miami, you want to attract – it's all about recruiting. It's not people say, oh, Alabama, their coaching is great. Their coaches, they've had some good coaches. They might have some trouble here. O'Brien coaching the offense may not be a good fit. The last couple offensive coordinators have been excellent.
Yes.
But I have a feeling Miami, if they're smart, they game planned for Clemson, and they had a great game plan, but then there was a torrential downpour, and they got they jumped off sides 4th and 5 and gave Clemson a first down on the first series, scored, turnover 14-0. But
King also turned the ball over a lot in that game.
Yeah, it was in a driving rainstorm.
Yeah.
So that game is played in dry weather. They might lose by 7 to 14 points. It just changed the way the game was played.
Yeah.
So if I'm Miami, I game plan very aggressive on offense, try some double passes, some trick plays, And on defense, I come after Young. If they sit back and allow them to run the football like North Carolina did, they'll lose by 35, 45 points. They got to come after them. And I think that Young in the first game, with all the new receivers, they're talented. I mean, watch the receivers. They're talented. The running backs, they're talented. I mean, they got a couple kids, Robinson. Brian Robinson's a starter. Another kid who's Robinson will play the slot's going to be really good also. But maybe in the first game they can be hit. I think the key for Miami, they got to be trailing by 10 points or less going into the fourth quarter and not lose by more than 17, which is pretty much the line for them to have some hope. If they do, then people will start buying in. I think the confidence of the kids, they lose by 40 points. There'll be no one at these games, and their recruiting will suffer. They only have like 6 recruits. So if you have a quarterback, you have a chance. They didn't have a quarterback till they had King. Yeah. At least with King, they have a shot.
I love him. I love him in Houston. I love him in Miami. I think it was a great move for him to transfer to Miami. It's just, this ain't the game.
Oh, and let me say this. My team that if I had to pick one team to win it all, is Clemson. National
championship.
National champions.
Okay.
So look at Dabo.
So here's my question. So, okay. Yeah. So, but we're talking about, so why do you think Clemson beats Georgia? Because I think Georgia's got a really good shot at knocking them off game one.
Well, first of all, head coach, Kirby Smart, big games. That's worth a field goal right there.
But he hasn't had many cross conference big games. His big games are often in conference against Nick Saban.
Right. Okay. But this is whoever loses this game can still end up in the Final Four.
True. Yes.
So I think Dabo's going to come into this game with a little chip on his shoulder. Lost 2 games last year. I think his quarterback is really good.
Are you sure Ugalele is good? I mean, I don't know yet.
I think he's good. He's good. I think that the only thing that I was concerned with is running back position, and I think they're going to be fine. They got Shipley, maybe the one of the top recruits in the country. They got 3 receivers, Matt, that are 6'3", 6'4", that can run like the wind and can probably take a quarter or maybe even a dime off the top of a backboard. They can jump out of the gym. And they're all healthy now. They haven't been. Last year, they were without 2 of those 3 guys. And I think that's a difference maker. Their defense was beaten up. A couple big key games. They lost guys like the first couple plays of the game or the week before going in Notre Dame. That was a tough place. That was a bad setup playing at Notre Dame there without your starting quarterback. Your linebacker, I think, didn't he get either was hurt. He got tossed after the first play of the game. So bad situation. And they get by that game. Look out. I like Clemson playing when they have a chip on their shoulder.
4.5 points is going to, I mean, if that closes at 5.5, like I think it might, I'm going to be all over Georgia. I haven't bet it yet. I'm waiting. I'm waiting. I think Georgia's going to be in the game, but I think I could see Clemson winning the game. Ugalele is a question for me in that situation against that Georgia defense. I think he could be turnover prone in that first game of the year, but
Georgia just not a big score. Watch the tape of their offense, even after they made the quarterback change, which I said they should have done from week 1. Maybe he was still hurt. Barrett, I don't know the situation, what was going on. He's coming off that knee injury. But I think Clemson, best defensive line. Quarterback, their defensive line, those 4 guys might all be first rounders.
Unbelievable. They're so talented. Yeah. All right. So really the Big 12 league is a 2-horse race. The conference is, I mean, I don't mean to be insulting, but it's pretty much garbage outside of it. You have Oklahoma and Iowa State. I'm not buying Sark at Texas. I think he's going to have a tough run of it personally. I mean, Baylor's down. Texas Tech is down. West Virginia's down. TCU's down. But is there anybody who you like outside of the Big 2? Anybody that could do something special?
The biggest surprise is I think Kansas State is down. Usually they're a team that you go look out. Same with Oklahoma State. I don't like their play caller, Casey Dunn. I think there's been a real regression there. They just don't have the players there at the skill positions they used to have. I think that's one of the rare conferences. I think it's those 2 guys. And Texas is all excited about moving to the SEC. Might be sorry in a couple of years when they're 6-6, 7-5. Now they think all of a sudden recruiting is going to get that much better. Maybe not so.
Well, I mean, look, isn't it fair, though, to say that A&M's number one selling point over Texas is SEC football, and they've finally been able to eliminate that, so they should start to get better kids? I mean, Houston, that was a huge recruiting area for Houston, for Texas, and all the kids are going to A&M because they want to go play in the SEC.
Well, it's helping here in South Florida. He has two kids. He has a receiver and a running back. A receiver that people had him as a 3-star. The kid might end up being the 4th receiver right off the bat. Wow. A team that's loaded. So he's going everywhere. He's not just going to Texas anymore. Jimbo's a really good recruiter. I go to a lot of games Friday nights when I finish doing shows just to relax. I can watch the Friday night game as I'm working later. Just need to let it on. And I get to see some players before they go to college too. And Jimbo and his recruiters, they really work it. You see, I'll be sitting there on a sideline, Miami. All of a sudden, you see a helicopter swoop in. Out comes Jimbo. Out comes someone from his staff. And literally, you'll see them within a quarter. They're going from being on the 10, 20-yard line. They're in the coaching box. They're talking to the coaches as the game's going on. So they got that personality. I mean, personally, would I want to go to A&M? I wouldn't want to live in College Station. The dump.
Over Austin. It's nice.
Yeah, over
Austin's a lot nicer. I mean, College Station's not bad. It's a typical college town. It's a 45-hour drive to Houston to get to a city. So it's not Austin, and it's also not wearing burnt orange. But the thing about wearing Aggie colors is the Aggies have always been the little brother, and now they have a chance to go ahead and say we're the SEC. And that has been a huge selling point and a monster problem. And Longhorn fans, they've got deeper pockets than Aggies do, and they were not happy about it. They were not happy about it at all. So that they wanted to eliminate that if they could. Okay, the Big Ten is interesting. All right. So obviously Ohio State's there. Yeah. But let's talk about some teams. And I'm curious. I want to start with Iowa. How do you feel about Iowa? Because I don't like their quarterback. I don't see a big play threat on their offense. I think their back 7 is really talented, but their front 4 is a problem. And in the Big Ten, I think that's a massive problem. You're going to get run over by these teams that run power offenses like Wisconsin. I bet under 8.5 wins for Iowa this year. How do you feel about the Hawkeyes?
One of my 5 bets, too. Both their defensive tackles are new starters. Yeah. Iowa's Iowa. It's the same play calling all the time. They're so conservative.
8-4 Ferris.
Yeah, and you're starting to see some. Yeah, and you're starting to see some teams starting to, look at Indiana. Indiana's going to be good this year. I mean, they were good last year. They were within a touchdown of beating Ohio State. Then they lose their quarterback, and people forgot about him. He's going to be back. So, yeah, I don't think they've moved into the 21st century yet, and you'll see a lot of their guys do better in the pros because of the system and weren't coached up. They don't have playmakers. They don't have you got to on defense. They play that 4-3, and they're so conservative. Bend, don't break. I mean, they don't blitz a whole lot. I think they need to take more chances. I think they're on the downtick a little bit.
Look, the Indiana game is so interesting. Week number 1 for Indiana and Iowa. Should Iowa be laying 4.5 points in that game?
I don't think so.
I
mean, Indiana not only has more playmakers on offense, they got guys on defense that make plays.
Right.
So a bunch of DBs that, they'll really they'll step in front of. They'll take some chances, and they're usually right. So they also added a nice DB from Ole Miss, Jonathan Hayes, kid who had 17 starts. That was the one weakness maybe in the backfield, and they changed some running schemes. They realized that their running game wasn't working well enough. So I was watching the spring game. Look at their run schemes and where they're blocking on some of these running plays. They're going to change it up, and sometimes they can have one play where they're playing zone. And I noticed this. You don't see this often. People see a cross block, but they'll do some different schemes where instead of the outside guy going first and blocking down, and then let's say a guard blocking down in the center, pulling out and taking the linebacker or the defensive tackle, they're doing it even opposite. I saw the center and a guard pulling out and then having the tackle or the guard coming down. So trying some different things because they just don't have their offensive line is they got a couple guys that aren't even 300-pounders. So it's all about angles and leverage, and I think they're pretty smart there at Indiana.
What do you make of Nebraska? Because their schedule is brutal. I bet under 6.5 wins for Nebraska this year. I like Scott Frost. I want them to do well. I know they got the quarterback coming back, and they've had some decent luck in recruiting recently. But man, that schedule is something else for Nebraska right now. I just don't see a great year in Lincoln. Where are you on the Huskers?
Well, sometimes it's the mentality, and I think Adrian Martinez not having to look over his shoulder might be a huge plus. I mean, he was looking over his shoulder the last couple of years, and
true.
If he made a mistake, he knew he was going to be pulled. He looked like he might. I'm never saying he's going to be great. I don't think he's an NFL quarterback, but I think he might turn the corner. They got a couple transfers. I think they got a kid from like Montana or something like that, a receiver. They don't have many game breakers, and I think a running back, a transfer also. He's going to have to be the guy. But the kid from Montana catches everything. He's not a guy that's going to catch a ball and go 50, 60 yards for a touchdown, but he's better than what they had before. And a big, huge defensive line. If they can just, get kids a little bit stronger, they got some guys at linebacker who can make some plays in space. I think they're going to win 7-8 games. I'm not saying there's no way they're winning 9 or 10. It is a tough schedule, but can it get any worse for Nebraska?
I don't know. Their schedule just is so brutal right now. And I want Scott Frost to do well. It's like he got the job, but I mean, they've got real problems trying to.
So they start off against Illinois. Think they're going to beat Illinois down.
I don't know. On the road, you like them to win on the road?
I still like Nebraska. It's a new coach, and
so here are their wins. Okay, to me.
Yep.
At Illinois.
Yep.
Fordham.
Yep.
Buffalo.
Right.
They're going to get killed at Oklahoma. They're going to. I have them losing to Michigan State on the road.
They can win that game.
They could. But it's a toss-up, but I have them losing. I think they go 1-1 between Northwestern and Michigan State. They'll win one, lose one. So if we can flip up there. I think they lose to Michigan. I know people debate on that, but I think they lose to Michigan. I think they lose at Minnesota.
Minnesota's not great. Come on.
No, they're not, but it's at Minnesota.
Minnesota was terrible last year.
So is Nebraska. I mean,
but Minnesota, you could run through their defense.
Okay.
You could play defensive tackle. I've seen the way you look, shape you're in. Their front seven is not good on defense. And then they'll lose to Ohio State and Wisconsin and
Iowa.
Well, you're not high on Iowa.
I'm not, but I'm higher on Iowa than I am on Nebraska. And so the wins, I have them winning 5 games.
They're going to win 7.
Okay.
All right, so we're on a little bit different side there.
We're on a different side there on that. I think Nebraska. I think their road games they're going to struggle on the road. They've really had a tough time winning road games under Scott Frost. Anyone else in the Big Ten that you like?
I told you Indiana. I mean, Indiana's really good.
I'm huge on Indiana. I'm so high in Indiana. Yeah. I think they are absolutely outstanding. Okay,
you listen to Tom Allen. Yeah, he gets it. Listen to any interview with him. He's recruiting now. I think he's going to make them a football school.
My only concern, Michael Penix Jr. having 2 ACL surgeries coming back is my only concern with it, because if he's out, their team is totally different. But Freifogel back, I really, Ohio State's receiving core is outstanding, but Indiana is going to be very tough to deal with every week, and a wide open offense and a coach that's got the nuts to go after anything and call big plays in big moments. So I love Indiana. Okay, SEC football time. This is my favorite bet of the entire college football season. Is over 7.5 wins on Ole Miss. How do you feel about the Rebels?
Let me look at their schedule here.
So Matt Corral is a Heisman Trophy dude in my mind, okay? I think Matt Corral is going to have a huge year. I think Lane Kiffin's going to throw up a ton of offense. I think they're going to improve their defense enough to go and compete and put up big numbers across the country. Yeah. Obviously, it's the SEC, but
he brought in some guys. I mean, I'm looking right now. He brings in a kid at Maryland that started, kid at Georgia who started a couple games, and even a Navy transfer. Well, that might be an upgrade for Ole Miss's secondary.
It is. I thought it was last year.
He also got a couple kids on the defensive line, linebacker from junior college. So can't get any worse. The only thing that concerns me is he fired his offensive line coach right after the spring game. That was kind of weird. But I like it. I like it a lot. Yeah, I'm looking at their schedule. I mean, they should start 3-0. Louisville's nothing this year. That's a neutral site game. Austin P. Tulane. I mean, at Tennessee isn't that much anymore. They can beat
and that's Lane Kiffin going back to Tennessee. You better believe he's going to throw a number up on the Vols.
Did they play Liberty? No, they didn't play Liberty last year, but they'll be ready for Liberty this year.
Correct.
And Vanderbilt and Mississippi State. Yeah. I mean, they're not going to win 10 games, but they'll
9-3.
Yeah. 9-3.
I think 9-3. I think over 7.5 for Ole Miss. I'm huge on Matt Corral. I just think this is going to be. I think Lane Kiffin's got something cooking offensively. Everything is fitting in perfectly for where the game is going, for what Lane wants to do. He lost 30 pounds. He's refocused his life. He's got his personal life is finally stabilized, and I think this is going to be a really fun year.
He's down to 2 girlfriends from 4.
Yeah, and they get along now, so he's not going to have to worry about the
him and Cliff Kingsbury. I mean, living the life, huh?
Having some fun. All right, so obviously everyone's going to talk about Alabama here, fine, but let's get in. We talked about Georgia already. There's Ole Miss. What about your Florida Gators? How do you feel about them this season? There's a bunch of money coming in here on Vegas on Florida futures at 40-1 to win the national championship.
No shot. I'm going to come out and say, I think Emory Jones is going to fall flat on his face.
Wow.
I think he's a great athlete. I don't think he's a passer.
Okay.
Don't be surprised by week 6, 7, you see one of the freshman quarterbacks in there. Just don't think. I don't think he's. I don't. Like I said, everyone likes him. I don't. Right. I see some things in his throwing motion. I think when he came in, he was running pretty much that run, the spread run package. I think teams are going to be waiting for him. They're going to make him throw the football, and I don't think he's going to be that successful. He's got some pretty good receivers. He's got Copeland and kid Xavier Henderson. Now, you remember the DB for Florida that drafted in the first round? It's his younger brother.
Oh, wow.
How good of an athlete is he? He played at Miami Columbus.
Okay.
So as a freshman, they had a 4x100 meter team that went to state. He was the anchor of the team that won state. The anchor is a true freshman. He's 6'4". He's like the receivers that you see at Clemson.
Okay.
He's at that level. So he's a guy who'll probably come on. So I don't like Jones, and I think Alabama's going to lose 2 games this year.
Alabama is
going to lose 2 games. They're going to lose to A&M and someone else.
Oh, wow. Jimbo's finally going to beat Nick.
Here's how he can do it. All right. They had 2 guys that were battling in spring ball. Watch this spring game. They got a kid named Calzada, and they got a kid named Hayes King. Calzada's the better passer. He's not the guy they should go with. I go with Hayes King, in my opinion. Why do I say that? He's a dual threat. How do you beat Alabama? Guys like Deshaun Watson. Run, throw, put pressure.
Johnny Manziel. The last time A&M beat Alabama was Johnny Manziel.
Right, and he destroyed them.
Yeah.
This kid Hayes King, if they start him from day one, if they start Calzada and they stay with him, they're not beating him. Calzada's more of a passer, and he's okay, pretty good passer. King may not be the better passer right now, but listen to this schedule. They open with Kent State, Colorado, New Mexico, and Arkansas. How much easier can you start and get experience for your young quarterback? Then they play at home against Mississippi State. Pretty good defense. Be a nice test. Then Alabama. 6 game. So follow that. That's my blueprint to beat Alabama if A&M is smart. So sometimes they'll do it. Sometimes they won't. We'll see if they follow it.
If Bama loses 2 games, are they in the playoffs?
No.
So you have Bama missing the playoffs. So here in Vegas at Circa Sports, I can bet a no on Bama to make the postseason, to make the playoffs.
Oh, I didn't see it. And what's the number?
Oh, let me pull it up. It's gonna be. You're gonna get a tasty
and I don't
number.
think Miami's beating them. Florida might give them a battle at Florida.
Yes, I agree with that. Yep.
A&M, I think that if they could go down there. LSU always comes to play them at home, and then at Auburn last game.
You get plus 3-1.
Okay, and then also
Alabama to miss the playoffs. It's 3-1.
And your Ole Miss Rebels too.
Yeah, no, I think if Ole Miss plays any defense, absolutely, I think that there's an absolute 100%. Actually, you know what? Sorry, I'm reading the wrong. That's Bama to win the championship on a no.
Okay.
So yes is plus 295 and no is minus 400. Where is I don't think Circa has up yet for to miss the postseason.
I haven't seen that bet up there.
But I'll shop for that. That's a bet I'll look for because that's got to be a huge number for Alabama to miss the postseason, but lose 2 games. So you would take the under on Bama win total then?
Yep.
Wow.
I think this is a year he loses 2 games.
So you don't like Bryce Young at all?
I think he's pretty good, but I think it's going to take him a little while. I don't like O'Brien as better offensive coordinator.
Who's better, Bryce Young or Ugalele for Clemson?
Ugalele.
Interesting. All right. Bigger, the bigger, dude. I mean, in terms of, I'm very interested to see how both. It's a very interesting year in college football. For that reason, do you get the Oklahoma love with Spencer Rattler to win it all, given where we are with Alabama, Clemson, and Ohio State with their new quarterbacks?
So I don't think they're going to win it all, but here's the difference in years past. They actually have a defense.
Yeah.
They got some DBs that can cover. So years past, they were giving up 350, 400 yards a game. The games that they lost, Spencer Rattler gave it away, turnovers. And I don't think he's going to do it this year. I think they'll get in the Final Four, and whether they win or not, I don't know. I like Clemson best. I like Oklahoma a lot. Their DBs, they had a couple guys that used to be starters that transferred out. Right. So you upgrade there.
Okay. 2 last questions before we wrap here. First question is, give me a name, give me a team that we'll be talking about that we haven't talked about yet that you think could have a big season. And I don't mean national championship. I just mean somebody who's going to be on the top 20. Someone's going to be on the radar screen that we aren't talking about.
Wake Forest.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wake Forest.
How about, so I think the last regular season game, they had 3 defensive backs. Three defensive backs that suited up for the game. They pulled in a couple receivers. So they went 4-5, but they do return 20 starters. They had a kid transfer. They had a couple of weaknesses on the offensive line. A kid transferred from Maryland, going to be a nice starter at right guard. And I think they had a kid from Colorado, a defensive back. I think it's a talented team. They had a bunch of young players that weren't quite ready at receiver last year. They'll be really good this year. I think Hartman's now he's almost a 2-year starter, and really good coach in Clawson. So they might go 9-3, 10-2, and most people won't even, people will take notice by the end of the year. But, if you're looking, I'm not going to give you Alabama's going to go 12-0. I think Wake Forest is going to have a nice year.
And to wrap, Lee, throw back to our old days in radio. If someone wants to get in touch and talk to you during the season, how can they do so?
Just go to ParamountSports.com. Try to do my best. You can call some nights at 11, 12 o'clock at night. I'm still here watching games and studying, so I'm going to give you my best shot. Am I going to win every game every week? No. But I think we've tracked it over the last decade. I've won an average of 17 out of 22 weeks. So there'll be 23 weeks this year in football. So that's a pretty big accomplishment, especially last year. I mean, I had the best record. I was looking up different handicappers on different sites that sell picks and stuff that are monitored. I don't see anyone that did better than me. And there was literally about 8 or 9 games that were either one of my top 2 or top 3 games that I was going to put out that was canceled on a Thursday or Friday. Wow. So feel pretty good about that. So they just want to check it out, ParamountSports.com. We do everything now, even added UFC this year. Had a guy always wanted to add it, but people weren't interested. People are interested in that now. Baseball, we're doing well. Hockey was number 1 in the country, almost 60% in hockey, average playing a minus, I think, 112 favorite. A lot of people tell you, I hit 72%. Yeah. They're playing minus 225 favorites. I mean, that's the new thing that people do. So, stay away from the Vegas Daves. Telling you they're 68-4 on their super goats, whales, or Brandon Lang, who lose every year. If you're looking for someone to give you a good shot, ParamountSports.com.
Lee, thank you for the time. Appreciate you coming on. Best of luck this season. We'll catch up down the road. Okay.
Thanks, Matt.